Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast, video edition. And we have got quite a weekend that we're coming off of for Michigan athletics. We will talk about all of that with our man in East Lansing, Tom Crawford. Tommy, welcome back to the podcast, and quite a time for you. I know you were down in Indianapolis, and quite a time for everyone that closely follows Michigan athletics.
Yeah, it was a grand time, starting on Thursday afternoon when it was 28-13 Colorado State, and Michigan was on the threshold of a 9-turnover first half. Things did not look good, but Frankie Collins, he had those 5 points, hit that three, and had that turnover for a touchdown, and all of a sudden that game flipped, and we know what happened Saturday night, and I know we're going to talk about it, but this was a great weekend for the Michigan Wolverines and the entire athletic department, which I'm sure we're going to talk about as well.
Absolutely. They thought it was such a good idea having those 9 first half turnovers that they did it again in the next game.
Yeah.
And it was, it's like, wait a minute, this does not work. But if somebody would have told you before all this started that you would not have your starting point guard for the entire first game and almost all of that next game against Tennessee, nobody would have believed that you were going to win that game. Almost nobody believed it, even with a full roster, because I think most people had it. Okay, Michigan's going to win or has a chance to win that first game, but they're not getting past Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee was one of those chic picks. It's an athletic team. I saw them coming out of the tunnel on Thursday night, for their game with Longwood. And I thought, that is just the most glaring physical athletic team. They look scary good, just running out of the tunnel to Rocky Top and with the candy striped pants, the orange and white. But Michigan, I thought they carried themselves very well and not getting rattled in that game, and great senior leadership with Eli Brooks. It shows you how much that counts. And but what you talk about metrics. If you had known that blah blah fill in the blank. I saw Tennessee hit 14 threes against Longwood, granted Longwood, but if you had told me that they were going to go 2 of 18 against Michigan from beyond the arc, I'd like those chances going into that game, and that's exactly what happened on Saturday evening.
Excellent point. That's one of the things that I was going to bring up, and you're right on, because some of those Michigan got out and contested. Some of those they had open shots and they just didn't knock them down. You're talking about Rick Barnes saying, as far as on the other side, he'll let Hunter Dickinson shoot out from the 3-point line all day, but sometimes he's on, and he was on, knocks down 3 3-pointers, and just had a great performance. Both he and Eli Brooks, two of the guys that you really need to come through in order to win a game like that. Let's not forget about Terrence Williams II, because he came in with some really tough playing, a couple of excellent putbacks. Frankie Collins wasn't scoring like he did the other day, but he certainly had to step forward and be a guy handling the ball in that game. A lot of good things that had to go right for Michigan, and did.
Yeah, and I thought Frankie, I realized he only scored a bucket, but I thought he did a lot of great things. That pressure defense that Tennessee throws at you, and they had the turnovers for touchdowns, and they had 9 points off turnovers in the first half. That was stressful. Even like trying to preserve that game. Eli got caught in a corner down there, had a turnover. There were some dicey moments late, but they made free throws, and then that rolling Xavier Simpson type rolling hook that Eli did without the backboard was amazing. But let's go over to Terrence Williams, as you threw out. There's next year's starting power forward, I would believe. That kid's got a lot of moxie to him. He's had some moments of discouraging moments. That's missed free throw with Seton Hall. These kids are so resilient. They're such high level athletes. I can't go on enough about this Tennessee win. I thought it was one of the best wins that Michigan has had in tournament play, and there's been a lot of great ones. recently. You think about the 5 Sweet 16s and the second most NC2A wins in the last 10 years, Michigan behind Gonzaga. I just thought it was a complete team effort against Tennessee, and it didn't hurt that our contingent. And I was sitting 3 rows behind Juwan Howard's wife and C. Webb and Ray Jackson, Mark Hughes, having that Michigan family and bringing the Fab Five. That was huge because Hunter was glaring over there, looking over there at C. Webb, who was connecting with him a lot, coming out of those timeouts. They started to get some visual communication going on there, and it all was a team effort, including guys from 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a lot of debate. Some folks embrace Weber coming back. Some still have hanging on to issues. But at tournament time, look, you're all together, and it's all good. You pull together in that time, and it's interesting to hear you say that there was that connection even during the game with Hunter Dickinson looking over. I think that as far as Michigan's concerned in this game, you look at it from the standpoint that sometimes in these first 2 rounds, you just get a good draw where some team is not really a good matchup, or some team has an injury or whatever, and you kind of breeze through to that Sweet 16. This was anything but that. I mean, these were a couple of wins against significantly higher seeded teams, and no apologies there. Michigan people saying that this team didn't belong in the Sweet 16 or in the NCAA tournament. Period. Nobody's saying that today.
Well, but it's not going to stop the haters. I mean, haters are haters. I mean, I know there was a lot of resentment in the Big Ten. Probably all 11 or all 13 fan bases beyond the University of Michigan that were absolutely livid that Michigan was in the tournament because they hate Michigan. That's why I say to hell with the rest of the Big Ten. I don't care about the Big Ten other than Michigan. It ends there. But
Well, you know
when yeah, but my point is that they said, oh, you got to go to Indy. Oh my God, you got a Mountain West team. Even though that David Roddy's one of the better players in the country, and they've had some nice wins. There were cynics that will say that was an easy draw, and that hey, Rick Barnes coaches at Tennessee. The guy can't get out of the first weekend. He's like Fran McCaffrey. I mean, you're always going to have those people, but the people that know basketball and can think with a clear mind know that this was a heck of an accomplishment for Michigan to get out of the first weekend. In this win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game backdrop down the stretch, and the program is looking spectacular at this moment relative to a couple of weeks ago.
And the interesting thing about all those haters that you were talking about, they have all the time in the world on their hands right now to ruminate and come up with more reasons that Michigan is still standing and their team is out of this thing. Hey, quick thought on that scene afterwards. Everybody dwelled on the scene at Wisconsin in the handshake line, but I think Juwan Howard won more than a few hearts afterwards with his very sincere, very heartfelt consolation of the Tennessee guard whom he had recruited, and wrapping his arms around that young man and trying to control the almost inconsolable.
Yeah, I mean, Juwan mentioned that with Kennedy Chandler about that embrace in the first. Michigan goes first as the winner in the post game presser, and then Kennedy Chandler talked about Juwan as a father figure, very emotional. Play with Jet, Juwan's son, way back at AU, back when 9 years old on. I mean, a very unique situation. I mean, and he almost, Jet almost went to Tennessee. I mean, it's crazy. Juwan almost lost out. It's got a unique relationship between Juwan and Tennessee and that basketball program and Kennedy. But I thought that was a great moment. From a PR standpoint, if that's important, I think it won a lot of people back. I tell you what, though, there are haters. I was talking to Anthony before a podcast that, they announced the starting lineups down there at Cambridge, and Tennessee had, in my estimation, it was about 3-1 Tennessee to Michigan, even though we were strong in our group. Um, when they announced the starting lineup and they announced Juwan Howard, I thought I was in Columbus, Ohio. The boos. So Tennessee does not have really a relationship with Michigan and Juwan Howard, but from afar, they hate him for whatever reason. Maybe it's Fab Five based. Maybe it's the incident in Madison. I don't know, but he had the last laugh on that, and Juwan's in a pretty good situation right now. I think PR and just learn from what that mishap, which happened in Madison, and move forward.
Tennessee's probably among those haters between from Charles Woodson over Peyton Manning in
Yeah.
'97 to Michigan beating Tennessee the last three times in the NCAA tournament. So what happens now? Everybody nationally will probably say, okay, it has been a great run for Michigan to get to the Sweet 16, but this is the end of the road. Uh, Villanova will be too much. Your thoughts on the next one?
Well, it's a great opportunity. I mean, Villanova it's not the Villanova team of 2018. I'll say that right now, but it's a very good team, very strong. Gillespie's a great leader. I mean, they have fundamentally a level that is right out of a textbook. I watched their game against Ohio State, and quite honestly, I wanted Michigan to play Ohio State because I thought that better. I'm always looking at things from a perspective of who's got the best shot or Michigan's best shot against, including staying up till 1 in the morning cheering for TCU against Arizona in case Michigan gets to Saturday. Rather play TCU, even though it's in the state of Texas, than Arizona, who Michigan had a difficult time with, obviously, out in Vegas. So I um, I like Michigan's chances. I mean, why not? They have no pressure on him. I think Devontae will play. I don't think he'll play. I mean, if they could get 12, 15 minutes out of him, that would be great. I think Michigan's in a good situation right now if they can take care of the basketball. They're not going to get more of an antagonistic defense than Tennessee threw at them, where we did have turnovers for touchdowns that looked like church basketball games at times. It looked really bad there. But I like Michigan's chances. Is it 50-50? Maybe. I think it's in the 50-50 category. Maybe that's being, too, thinking with my heart. But I think Michigan has got a good chance of winning as losing in this game on Thursday night.
All right. Well, it has certainly been a as it always is an engrossing NCAA tournament thus far. So long Kentucky and so long Baylor, and you got the big seeds out, and a couple of them anyway, and then St. Peter's that just has played its way into the Sweet 16. Always compelling. We will turn our eyes to San Antonio next and see what Michigan has. But you referred to a massive weekend for Michigan athletics in general, and we would be very remiss not to take a look at that because you're talking about the men wrestlers coming very close to a national championship, the women's gymnasts winning the Big Ten, Mel Pearson's hockey team holding off Minnesota at Minnesota for a Big Ten championship. The women's basketball team winning in their NCAA opener, and just an amazing performance all around by the Maize and Blue.
Yeah, I ran into Ward Manuel a couple times in the tunnel. Yeah, asked him, "Can you get that smile off your face?" He goes, "No." And this is before the hockey game got even decided up there in Minnesota. Michigan winning that game. We were listening to that game on the way back on the phone, 4-3. It is amazing. The gymnastics team. I mean, women's basketball team. I mean, go on and on and on. And the wrestling. The problem with wrestling is you got it's a one league sport, the Big Ten, and you got Penn State. It's just an absolute juggernaut. Michigan finishes second. Wow. Michigan athletics as a whole. And you follow up, what the football program, which has been somewhat of the weak link of getting to the, going deep in, championship runs. Finally gets the Big Ten title and goes to, Miami for the Orange Bowl and CFP. Wow. This is the goal. I mean, we always talk about, hey, is this the golden era? The Mays era of Michigan athletics is it's at a pretty good status right now, JB.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I started doing this in the '90s when you had the Fab Five, and you
Oh
had
yeah.
certainly Michigan in the midst of five straight Big Ten championships and a national championship later in that decade. You had hockey winning national championships, and this gives you a little bit throwback feeling to that if a couple of these teams get over the top eventually. But turning it back to basketball for a minute, when you saw Chris Webber, Ray Jackson hugging Jawan Howard, we know Jalen has also been there. Just the thoughts on how supportive these guys are, and how much they care, and the pride that they take in seeing one of their own coaching this team.
It was amazing to witness it, and that started on Thursday with Jalen there. It's like, okay, we're just missing, where's Jimmy King? Need him to show up, and we got the thing covered. It was when Jalen was there. Let me start with him. He was so engaged in his team. I mean, these guys were like the most diehard fans you'd ever see. They were locked in, and Ray and Chris were sitting right next to, in that box that they have for the families, right across from the bench, and it was and Juwan's kids, and um, something told me as ever and all the that Michigan was not going to lose this game because those guys were there. I don't know why. Don't ask me, but they were trying to develop eye contact and shouting supportive things to those players coming out of those timeouts because the Michigan bench is directly across. It made me feel good about the Fab Five. The Fab Five is an era that has some bittersweetness and sadness and just a lot of everything. But I felt when I was in the tunnel on the Michigan bench side when Juwan came out, tears going down his cheeks. He's got that. I took a photo of Ray and C Webb and Juwan, and that was a photo for the ages in Michigan basketball lore. And it's almost like, okay, and then Ray and C Webb went into the locker room and talked to the team. I just think that that whole era will have will finally, with Chris coming back, will have its proper place in history. Somehow it's going to fit in, and it's going to fit in nicely. And it all made for a great weekend.
No doubt. And you talk about that era. This has been a pretty darn good era over the last 10 years or so itself. I know that you noted that Michigan, with the second most wins, just behind Gonzaga, for most wins in the NCAA tournament over the last 10 years. And as far as you make the Sweet 16, it's a successful season. A lot of the other stuff is going to be forgotten. Michigan struggles in the non-conference seasons. Michigan struggles in the Big Ten, and not really contesting to for another Big Ten championship. But you make the Sweet 16, so much of that is forgotten, and it wasn't that long ago when Juwan had gotten suspended, and then they lose at home, and it looks like they have to win at Columbus to make the tournament. And it going into the NCAA's, I saw and heard a lot of talk about, well, this is pretty dicey going forward. Where is this thing going? I think, you win a couple games in the NCAA tournament, that changes it all back around. I think you had a lot of people anyway, and I think you and I would be in that group that looks at Jawan Howard and says this guy is going to be a success over the long haul. He's only in his third year as head coach here. Uh, but I think that it was good to calm down the talk and just to put a stamp on this season that they've won these two games and certified it with, you know what, it was a young team, a learning team, and it started to come together at the right time.
John, I've mentioned on this podcast a number of times during our basketball part of our podcast, following this program, basketball program in person since '64, and it was a frustrating year. It was a year that was, I was doing a tango with this team mentally. I mean, and I remember walking down from the media level with Ballas, and we're thinking, God, this team's driving me crazy. I mean, it's just driving. It was that a home game with Ohio State, Michigan got beat by double digits, and there were some moments like, where is this thing going? Then the Wisconsin situation, I thought was really going to set the program back because of the negative PR, and then coming out of that, I thought the suspension though ended up perfect. I think Phil Martelli being there was just like, God, how great was this situation to have him on staff? He did a masterful job. Obviously, and Howard Isley and Saudi Washington being there, everything came into place. I mean, you can look at all these moving parts that happened from Madison to now. It's a lot of people stepped up, including a lot of players, including Frankie Collins and then Eli with the leadership and Hunter. It goes on and on and on. And you're right, it's a successful season because when you get to the Sweet 16, I mean that you get 3 solid days of being talked about at a high level. That's a huge accomplishment. I equate it's like making the Final Four 40 years ago. I mean, as far as the sheer exposure and positivity. So, and with the seventh best recruiting class coming in next year, all of a sudden it's all good, JB.
All of a sudden it's all good. This is the time of year to make that happen, and a lot of broken hearts, but a lot of folks still very pumped up about their basketball team, and that includes Michigan folks at this point. Tom Crawford, always great to have you with us. We will talk again soon, my friend, and see where all this goes headed forward.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be a great opportunity for Michigan. Look forward to talking to you next time. An honor to be on the Wolverine podcast with John Borton.